What is going on, world-class athlete? I'm so excited and fired up to be delivering your Transformation Week Backhand Volley comprehensive training, where we're gonna be mastering the when, the what, the why, and the how of each of the 4 stages that constitute your ability of generating that world-class backhand volley of the unit turn, the acceleration, contact, and the follow-through. And along each of these 4 stages, we're gonna map 11 distinct biomechanical checkpoints of your body to focus on, as well as the range of those values to literally give you the most comprehensive understanding of the backhand volley imaginable, as well as I would encourage you, as we're going through this video, that you have out both your downloadable Transformation Week PDF, as well as the downloadable stroke assessment and footage of your backhand volley that you've been hitting. So as we're going through this video, you're not just logically understanding exactly how you can develop a world-class backhand volley associated with what are all the checkpoints, what's it feel like, what's it gonna be like when you're that player who's able to execute with amazing technique and confidence on your backhand volley. But even more powerful than that is you're gonna have the distinct, clear roadmap of the elements that constitute a world-class backhand volley. What should you focus on and dial in on your game that's gonna yield for you the fastest possible progress? All right, world-class athlete, so with that frame, let's go ahead and dive right in, and I'm so fired up for you to master this, because if there's one shot that is the most satisfying in tennis, it's the ability of being able to cleanly and effortlessly put away backhand volleys, and it all starts with that split step. So if you haven't already watched the forehand volley training, I would highly recommend that you watch that, because we're gonna cover so much more on the split step. But just a quick refresher. Right when your opponent's making contact, you wanna focus on landing that wide split step with your feet at least shoulder width apart, maintaining that lordotic or inward curvature of your spine, because that's gonna allow you to move and adjust to the ball so much quicker if you have that inward curvature. And then the third and final checkpoint is you want to see that your feet are performing a mild plantar flexion. In other words, that your heels should be slightly off the ground. If you achieve those 3 key checkpoints of the split step, you're exactly identical to the world's best volleyers right as your opponent makes that contact. So now that you understand exactly how to split and when to split, let's now talk about how much you should bend. In other words, how much should you bend on the volley? So the range of values here is you can either have about a 10-degree bend all the way from those low volleys, that 90-degree bend, where you're picking up those low volleys just like that. Another key area that's really important on the footwork with the backhand volley is how exactly should you use your feet. So the world's best volleyers, when they're moving forward into the court, you want to look for a timed lunge step. So as you're stepping in, if you go ahead and watch my feet here, watch how as I close on this shot, is you'll see what I did there is when I read that oncoming ball, I split, adjusted, and then stepped from my outside foot and made contact landing on my inside foot. That's the footwork pattern that every single top volleyer is gonna achieve when they're closing into the net. So that's exactly what you wanna focus on with your feet. The second question is gonna be, how much should you rotate? How much do the world's best volleyers rotate their body, and what should you focus on achieving for your backhand volley? Now the variation in angles here is, if the ball is coming right at you, you'll see pros rotate actually 0 degrees. In other words, their chest will stay straight on to the net like that. But that's typically only when the ball is coming really fast right at players. They're just splitting and then they're blocking. The majority of volleys, anytime where you have time, you want to rotate your trunk and your hips 90 degrees. So when you finish, the key checkpoint to look for is on your volley, when you finish your unit turn, is your hip and is your trunk pointed towards that side fence with your shoulders perpendicular to the net, just like that. If you watched, and I would highly encourage you as well to watch that comprehensive key concepts video associated with the volley, because in there we talk about the circular velocity of the acceleration. The reason why the pros rotate 90 degrees on the backhand volley is because that allows them to generate more forward force with their hitting arm. So rather than going into all that detail, just watch this. If I rotate my chest 90 degrees and I accelerate on my backhand volley, notice how my racket is traveling forward. In other words, I'm able to generate forward power going forward into the ball just like that. Whereas if my chest was only rotated, let's say 45 degrees, now watch where my arm goes. My arm, rather than going forward, is gonna go to the side. So the key checkpoint for you to focus on is just after you time that perfect split and you have time, rotate that trunk to be 90 degrees. So when you make contact, your shoulders are about perpendicular to the net, just like that. All right, world-class athlete. So now you know, and you have a comprehensive evaluative feedback criteria to know, okay, what should I be looking for exactly with my legs, and what should I be looking for with my rotation to know if I'm executing world-class backhand volley technique. The third checkpoint is then gonna be how much should you flex or extend your trunk. So what we're gonna see with top volleyers is on the majority of volleys, the trunk is just gonna stay neutral. So you're not gonna have to focus on whether you're leaning forward or leaning back. What we will see, especially when you're closing in at the net, you wanna really emphasize having that trunk leaning forward, because that's gonna allow you to pounce and get your weight to travel forward into the court, right? You can think about it, if your chest is leaning forward, is this gonna allow you to get more forward acceleration from your body? And the answer is yes. Also, if you're leaning forward, you're gonna be able to generate more force from your hitting arm structure as well. So now we've covered those 3 key checkpoints of the whole body. Now we're gonna dive into the 7 anatomical biomechanical checkpoints of the arm and 1 of the non-dominant arm. So the first question to know is, on your backhand volley, how high should you flex your elbow up? How high do the pros do this? The range of values here is anywhere from like a negative 45 degrees all the way up to a positive 90 degree value. Now the negative 45 is when balls are coming at you very, very quickly and you don't have time to react. What we'll see the pros doing is actually abducting their shoulder out to the side to block those volleys. So just remember, if the ball's coming fast at you with the right hip, rather than trying to hit your forehand, it's not as well equipped to rather just block using that backhand side. But the primary value and range that we're gonna see with the world's best volleyers is they're gonna raise their elbow up at approximately a 45 to a 90 degree shoulder flexion value. This is shoulder flexion, just how high is that whole shoulder going up. Now, the caveat and the intuition behind this is question, if the ball was coming higher, would pros have more or less of that shoulder flexion? And the answer is that they would have more, because on the backhand volley in particular, the muscles are stronger or are they weaker than on the forehand side? And the answer is on the backhand side, the muscles are gonna be weaker, exactly, because you can't generate as much power going this way as you can from generating force going this way. So it's super critical. On your backhand volley, we wanna always make sure that we're preparing our racket above the height of the ball. By having our prep and by you just focusing on this 1 key checkpoint, that could be the game changer for your volley. Just making sure that your elbow and your racket are above the height of the ball. This is gonna allow you to achieve 2 massive benefits. Benefit number 1 is now you're gonna be able to generate more force going forward and down into the shot, because the muscles associated with the elbow going down, right? So going up is called shoulder flexion. The elbow going down, shoulder extension. These are powerful muscles you're tapping into of the lat and the posterior deltoid. So that's number 1, is you're gonna get so much more power by having that high prep. But the second benefit is now you're gonna be in a position to generate more of a downward force on the ball, which is gonna give you that geometric angle going down into the court. All right, world-class athlete. So just remember for those key values to look for with your volley, are you getting your elbow at either a 45 or a 90 degree angle, depending on the height of the ball? And one last question in regards to this shoulder flexion understanding is an intuitive question. What do you think the pros are gonna prep higher on? In other words, if it was, let's say, Federer's volley or Djokovic's volley, so if the ball's coming at the same height to the forehand or the backhand side, do you think the pros would have a lower or a higher height on the forehand side versus the backhand side? And the answer is that the pros are naturally gonna prep slightly higher on the backhand side because of that earlier example we talked about of being able to generate more power. So that's exactly how high you should prep your racket. The second question associated with world-class backhand technique is how far back should you prep your racket to generate that forward force? Now, what we'll see with the pros here is the most common value is about a 10 degree adduction value. This basically means if the arm was in a straight line, the arm would be back at about a 10 degree value. So if we do that 10 degree value, and then we perform all the other 7 key anatomical checkpoints, boom, there we go. There's that perfect preparation position that we see the best players in the world doing. Now, this is basically another power lever for you. So the key thing to notice is that when the balls are coming very slow, could you in that situation create a little bit more of the adduction? And the answer is yes, because if the ball was slow, by taking your arm further back, you can now generate even more force going forward. So I hope this is unlocking for you so much clearer. You're like, oh, got it. If the ball is slower, I can prep higher. If the ball is slower, I can prep a little bit further back, and that's gonna allow me to generate more power. Whereas if the ball comes fast, the ball is slow, I can have a shorter backswing, I can have a further in front backswing, and it all makes intuitive sense. But again, those key ranges is anywhere from that 0 to 90 for the flexion, and anywhere from 10 to 45 degrees back for the adduction. All right, world-class athlete. So that is exactly, essentially, how high should you look for your elbow to be, and how far back should you look for your elbow to be. The third checkpoint, which is what the pros are going to achieve on virtually every single backhand volley, is how much bent should your right elbow be, dominant arm elbow if you're a lefty. The answer here is that it can range from anywhere from about a 10 degree to a 0 degree. So what we'll see with the Bryan brothers in particular, I've studied their volley, it's been so much fun learning about how their technique works, is especially when balls come fast right at them, you'll see that they actually will keep their arm straight as they just drive the volley forward. Versus players like Federer, and especially on slower balls, you'll see then players achieve this full 90-degree bend. The most common value would be, what do you think? Do you think players are more so going to have their arms straight, or do you think it's going to be more common to have that 90-degree bend? And the answer is it's the 90-degree bend. On the vast majority of volleys, we'll see every single top player, whether it's Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, they're all going to achieve the first two things we talked about of the shoulder flexion and then the adduction. But they're then gonna have their elbow bent at approximately a 90-degree angle. So why is this the case? What's the benefit of this? Why should you be doing this? Here's the reason, and this was so powerful for me once I learned it, because it allowed me to start generating so much more effortless power, so much more control, allowing me to feel like I was having so much more fun at the net. And the benefit is that by bending your elbow 90 degrees, what this is gonna allow you to do is it's gonna allow you to generate so much more racket head speed with your acceleration. So if we remember the forehand volley typically has the arm straight. That's because the muscles on the forehand volley are strong. But because the muscles on the backhand volley are weaker, we want to create that bend so then we can generate more power from the elbow extension, generating power, generating spin, as well as driving the ball down. So just remember the key checkpoint. In the rare instance, when the ball is coming directly right at you with pace, that's when it's totally great to have the arm straight. But on the majority of volleys, the checkpoint you want to look for is that you've achieved a 90-degree bend of your dominant arm elbow. All right, world-class athlete. So that is the exact key value to focus on with how high, how far back, and how bent your dominant arm should be. The next question is then, how much should your forearm be supinated or pronated? This is an easy value because the pros just have this as totally neutral. So you don't have to worry about supination or pronation. So now let's go on to how flexed or extended should your wrist be on that backhand volley. And what we'll see with every single top volleyer in the game is when they achieve their unit turn, they're gonna create anywhere from a 10 to a 45 degree extension of their wrist. So this is wrist flexion, this is wrist extension. So if I had my wrist in a flex position and I achieved my backhand volley, the checkpoint would look like my racket was pointed directly towards the back fence just like that. Versus what we see with the best players in the world is that you'll be able to see right through their strings on their backhand volley. This is created from the wrist joint moving upward into the shot just like that. So why exactly do the pros create this 10 to 45 degree extension of the wrist? So the number one key benefit of having this wrist extension is that it's gonna allow you to then achieve the perfect contact point with your wrist in a neutral position. So the intuition behind this is understood by the biomechanical concept of motion-dependent effects. So motion-dependent effects are at play when we see the ATP racket flip on the forehand or the serve pro drop position. Essentially what it means is that because of the relaxation of the wrist, which is what you want to achieve on the volley, which if any of this sounds like you don't understand this, I would highly just recommend you to watch the 3 concepts video. But essentially the reason why you want to create this wrist extension is because now when you accelerate, the wrist is actually naturally going to start to flex because the arm travels forward and this causes the racket to naturally travel back, which creates that wrist flexion. So to give you that full click understanding, got it, If we did not extend our wrist, then when we accelerated, our wrist would be in too flexed a position. Does that make sense? So it starts at a 10-degree value or 45-degree angle, and then as we accelerate, it naturally goes into that neutral value. So this is neutral value of the wrist, but we start extended, and then we achieve that perfect contact. All right, world-class athlete, so we've already covered so much. I hope you're starting to feel so much clarity of, wow, this is exactly what I need to do in order to start feeling so fluid, so confident, so aggressive, having so much fun at the net, whether I'm playing doubles, singles, or just wanting to put away easy balls. The final checkpoint that we're gonna look for with that hitting arm is essentially how much should your wrist be ulnar deviated or radially deviated. So what every single top player is gonna do when they achieve their uniturn is they're going to slightly radially deviate their wrist for the exact identical reason that we just covered associated with the wrist extension. So as you accelerate, by starting in a radially deviated position, as you accelerate, you're naturally gonna create some ulnar deviation. So if you start with your racket here, when you accelerate, it's naturally gonna open up to create that perfect neutral position at contact. The last and final checkpoint is of that non-dominant arm, and then we've covered everything that you need to know to master that uniturn. And the last thing, just very, very simply, with that non-dominant arm, what you want to focus on doing is bringing that non-dominant arm, holding the choke of your racket as you're executing that perfect uniturn position. And then the last kind of checkpoint that we didn't cover but is vital as well, that is caused by that left arm, is then going to be the internal rotation of the shoulder. So basically, because you're holding the racket with your left arm and because you're rotating your entire body, naturally that's going to cause the racket angle to be back at about a 45-degree angle by the shoulder internal rotation of 45 degrees. So if the shoulder was not internally rotated, it would look like this. So your backhand volley would kind of look like this. But we don't see any pro looking like that, right? So essentially by holding that non-dominant arm on the racket and then positioning it back, that's what gives you that internal rotation, piecing that all together to give you that world-class unit turn checkpoint so you're ready to step forward and spring into that shot. Let's go. So now that we've covered everything that you need to know about that unit turn, let's now dive into that acceleration. So the acceleration is really powered by 4 simple motions that by you just focusing on achieving these 4 simple motions and really focusing on really letting go and relaxing with every other part of your body and just focusing on these 4 things, it's gonna give you the ability of tapping into that massive force, control, effortless power, and just feel so much fun and in control when you volley. The first motion is of the legs. The key checkpoint that you want to focus on after you achieve these 11 key anatomical motions of the unit turn is that you're generating, unless the ball's coming right at you, that you're generating forward momentum by stepping from your outside leg into your inside leg, just like that. So if the ball's coming right at you and you want to generate power, it would look something like this, where you're stepping forward. If you're moving out to the side, you would then take a cross lunge step going forward like that. So that's exactly how to perform with the footwork. Now there's just 3 other anatomical checkpoints to focus on. The first is because we've achieved that shoulder flexion in the unit turn, we're now going to extend our shoulder down. So the first thing is after we've stepped with our leg, we want to focus on pulling the butt of the racket straight down using our lat. A key intuitive drill that you can use to feel this, if you actually have a racket with you right now, or if you just want to start gaining intuition, is to actually grip your racket and hold onto it with your non-dominant arm, and then actively, after you achieve the unit turn position, pull your arm down. This is also great to use with the resistance band. Pull your arm down and keep your wrists and forearm very relaxed. And you should feel this amazing, powerful, confident stretching sensation in your lat and your posterior delt. This feeling is what whooshes forward and gives you that massive acceleration. So that's the first checkpoint, is having that arm travel down. The second is that you want your shoulder to perform what's known as the abduction. So the first checkpoint is it going down? The second is your arm going forward? You piece those together and then you get that perfect diagonal acceleration pathway that we see every single top player in the doing on every single volley. Where from that side angle, when they're stepping in, you see that racket travel forward and on a diagonal path by stepping, by extending, and by abducting. The third and final checkpoint is then gonna be with that elbow. What every top player is gonna do when they make contact on their backhand volley is they're gonna go from that elbow being bent at around a 90-degree angle to then being perfectly straight, just like that. All right, world-class athlete. So those are the 4 key anatomical motions associated with world-class acceleration. And by using those 4 key anatomical motions, what it's gonna ensure that you're using is you're generating the majority of power from your legs, and you're generating the majority of power from the bigger muscles of your entire shoulder, giving you that effortless experience, control, and flow at the net. So now we've covered that. Now the last question associated with accelerating is, where exactly should you make contact? Now the ranges here are identical. If you've gone through the slice video, it's the identical checkpoints. Where the first thing to note about the contact is that what's so simple is you're actually gonna maintain everything completely passive and relaxed and neutral. So essentially none of the angles besides the 4 that we covered are gonna change consciously. So basically what that means is all you have to focus on is generating power from those 4 key motions we just covered, and all the other motions are gonna automatically optimize themselves. So the first thing to note is how high or how low your arm should be at contact. So this value is gonna range from anywhere being at about a 45-degree angle of shoulder extension to about a 10-degree angle of shoulder flexion. So basically the range of contact height on your backhand volley is anywhere from about 45 degrees here on higher balls to about 10 degrees here. The second checkpoint is then how much should your shoulder be abducted? And here it's anywhere from about a 10-degree value all the way to a 45-degree angle in front. So just remember those key checkpoints of your arm can be high at about a 10-degree or 45-degree, and your arm can be in front at about a 10-degree to a 45-degree. So either range is a 10 to a 45-degree. So that range of motion looks like this. So here would be the lowest, and then here would be the highest from that back angle as well. So lowest contact point, highest contact point, and then how far back? Here, all the way to there. So that's exactly what you want to focus on with your contact. The other checkpoints associated with the wrist is super valuable, is right when you're making contact. What you want to see with your racket is what's known as the theory of the double lag theory. So essentially, as the pros are making contact and they're driving their whole hitting arm structure of the bigger muscles of their shoulder going forward into the shot, what's gonna happen is that you'll notice that their racket is actually gonna actively absorb and relax at contact. Now what this means is that the pros, are they really tensing up their forearm and wrist at contact? Or is their wrist and forearm staying very relaxed as they drive their shoulder through the ball? And the answer is that when you're making contact, you want to focus on keeping the wrist as relaxed as humanly possible. This is going to give you, like a trampoline, the most amount of control, and also give your volley a lot of room for air. Because if you're accelerating with really tight wrist, the chances of you tensing up and the ball traveling high are much greater, versus having a really relaxed wrist. It allows you to generate more feel, more touch, more precision, and have that ability of being in total control. The last element is going to be that follow through. There's really just one key checkpoint that if you focus on is going to yield for you a world-class follow through technique. So we've already now given you the ability of understanding how to accelerate. The key with your follow through is just to make sure that when you finish with your racket acceleration, that the checkpoint you're looking for is as your arm travels forward, that you maintain your racket parallel to the net, just like that. By focusing on that one key checkpoint, it's ensuring that you're not tightening up your wrist, you're not contracting with your forearm, but you're rather just generating forward power going into the shot. Our world-class athlete, we have covered so much in this video. I hope you're now feeling so confident and so ready to step out on the court. And I'm so fired up and pumped for you to now being able to go into those follow along drill videos. We're gonna take all this information that we just covered and we're gonna put it into your unconscious muscle memory. And I'm just so excited and confident and optimistic and wanna leave you with the mindset that you can't change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. Just remember, direction determines destination. Because when we set for ourselves these really big goals of being able to execute world-class backhand volley technique or anything else in our life that is a highly ambitious goal, it's gonna take some time. It's gonna take a lot of practice. The reason why it's so amazing to have the experience of being able to play with a backhand volley is because it's so challenging to develop. The things that are the hardest to get we value the most. So my encouragement to you, my friend, is that no matter how difficult it might be for you to start generating with that world-class backhand volley technique, just stay focused, stay in the right direction. Because by maintaining focus on, all right, am I showing up on the court with enthusiasm? Am I showing up? Am I focusing on the one key checkpoint? Have I reviewed my footage? It's just through that process of getting out there, following the system, implementing the drills, that you wake up one day and you're like, whoa, I can execute literally perfect world-class backhand volley technique and I don't even have to think about it. So keep that in mind as we're on this learning journey together. I'm so pumped and excited to see you in those drill videos. Let's think big and I'll see you then. Let's go, world-class athlete.